In the quiet corners of our world, where the veil between what we know and what we don't is thinnest, some stories wait to be told. This is one of them. It begins not with a bang, but with a whisper name found in the margins of a forgotten book, Alara. My story starts like many others, with a simple curiosity. I'm a historian, or at least, I was. My specialty was obscure artifacts, the kind that gather dust in museum basements. One rainy afternoon, I was cataloging a collection of 17th century navigational tools when I found a star chart, and like any I'd ever seen. It was beautifully crafted from a strange, almost iridescent parchment. But what caught my eye was a tiny inscription at the bottom: I'd Astra per Alara. To the stars, through Alara. I'd never heard the name in any historical context. It wasn't a known astronomer, a ship, or a celestial body from that era. For weeks, I dug through archives, cross-referencing star maps, and maritime logs. Nothing. It was a ghost. My colleagues told me to let it go, that it was probably just a lover's dedication, a footnote in a forgotten romance. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place, an old book on folklore and myth. Tucked away in a chapter about sea legends was a brief mention of Alara's compass, a mythical artifact said to guide sailors not to land, but to places between places. The book described it as a device that didn't point north, but hummed with a low, resonant frequency, pulling the user toward unseen pathways. The description of the compass matched the star chart I held. The symbols weren't stars, they were coordinates of a different kind. This discovery changed everything. My academic research turned into a personal obsession. I used a sound wave analysis tool on a high-resolution image of the chart, and there it was, a faint, almost imperceptible frequency embedded in the ink itself. Using this frequency as a key, the star-like symbols on the chart rearranged themselves on my screen, forming not a map of the sky, but a map of the Earth. It pointed to a single, remote location, a tiny, uninhabited island in the North Atlantic, known on modern maps as the Silent Isle. Getting there was an ordeal. I chartered a small boat, piloted by a grizzled old sailor named Finn who thought I was crazy. The closer we got, the stranger things became. Our GPS started glitching, the compass spun wildly, and a thick and natural fog rolled in, swallowing us whole. Finn was ready to turn back. But then, we heard it, a low, melodic hum, the same frequency from the chart. Echoing across the water, it was coming from the island. The Silent Isle lived up to its name. There was no birdsong, no rustle of wind in the trees. The air was heavy, still. In the center of the island stood a circle of monolithic stones, ancient and weathered. And in the very middle of the circle, on a stone pedestal, was a device. It looked like an astrolabe, but it was made of a dark, polished metal that seemed to absorb the light. Alara's compass. As I reached out to touch it, the humming grew louder, resonating in my chest. The symbols on its surface glowed with a soft, blue light. When my fingers made contact, the world didn't just go silent, it vanished. The fog, the stones, the island itself dissolved into a swirling vortex of color and light. I felt a sensation not of movement, but of unfolding, as if reality itself was being turned inside out. When the light subsided, I was standing in the same spot, but the island was different. The sky was a deep violet, dotted with constellations I'd never seen. The monolithic stones were no longer weathered, they were pristine, gleaming as if freshly carved. And I was not alone. A figure stood before me, shimmering with a soft iridescence. She was tall, elegant, and her eyes held the wisdom of ages. "You heard the call," she said, her voice a chorus of harmonies. "Few do anymore." "Who are you?" I stammered, my heart pounding. "I am Alara," she replied. "And this is one of my many pathways." "You call it a compass. We call it a key." She explained that she and her people were not from another planet, but from a different layer of reality, one that coexists with ours, unseen. They were explorers, cartographers of existence itself. The compass was a tool that allowed them to navigate the folds between these realities. Long ago, they had contact with humanity. sharing knowledge and guidance. But as our world grew louder, more rigid in its understanding, we lost the ability to perceive them. We forgot. Laura showed me wonders that day. I saw cities made of pure light, forests where the trees sang, and oceans that flowed in the sky. It wasn't magic, it was a different kind of physics, a different set of rules. It was a universe far grander and more complex than I had ever imagined. She told me the star chart wasn't a map to a place, but a key to a perceptual way to attune oneself to the frequency of the pathways. Before she sent me back, Alara gave me a choice. I could stay, become a traveler between worlds, and leave my old life behind, or I could return, with the knowledge of what I had seen. But with the memory of the pathways sealed once more, I chose to return. Why? Because I realized our world needed this knowledge, this hope. We needed to know that the universe is so much bigger than we think, that the impossible is just a reality we haven't learned to see yet. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the weathered, silent island. The compass was gone. Finn was shouting my name, his voice thick with panic. To him, I had only been gone for a few seconds. I left the island with a story no one would believe and a secret humming in my soul. I'm no longer a historian who studies the past. I'm a storyteller, sharing a glimpse of a possible future. I look up at the night sky now, and I don't just see stars. I see pathways, and I know, with absolute certainty, that we are not alone. We are just, for a little while, deaf to the music of the cosmos. But the invitation is always there, written in forgotten maps and humming in the silence between heartbeats, waiting for us to listen. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. There are many more mysteries to explore together. Until next time.